My fiancée publicly humiliated me at her office party, so I ended the engagement right then and there. I'm 31M, and I've been with my fiancée Lila for 3 years. We've had our ups and downs like any couple, but overall, I thought we were solid. I'm a small business owner, nothing fancy, just a landscaping service that I built from the ground up. I've always loved working outside, taking care of gardens, and making spaces look beautiful. It's honest work, and I take pride in what I do. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and allows me to support my family. Lila, on the other hand, is an accountant. She's smart, driven, and works in a pretty high-paying corporate job. She's always been surrounded by people who value status and appearances. At first, I didn't think much of it. We were opposites, sure, but we seemed to balance each other out. She admired my work ethic, my drive, and the fact that I built something from scratch. At least, that's what I thought. But that night, everything changed. So it all started when Lila invited me to her office's annual party. She'd been asking me for months, but I'd been avoiding it. I'm not big on social events, especially ones where I'd be surrounded by people who don't understand my work or lifestyle. I don't mind a drink with friends or a casual hangout, but corporate parties? Not my scene. However, Lila kept insisting, and she promised me it would be low-key. Eventually, I caved. The day of the party, I made sure to look my best. I knew I wouldn't fit in with the corporate crowd, so I decided to put in the effort to at least make an impression. I wore a nice suit, polished my shoes, and even styled my hair. I wanted to show Lila that I cared, that I was making an effort for her, even if I wasn't comfortable in this world. When we arrived at the venue, it was this sleek, upscale hotel with shiny marble floors and chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. The moment we walked in, I could tell I was out of place. Everyone was dressed in expensive suits and dresses, sipping on wine like it was water. I felt like I had just stepped into a movie where I was the outsider, trying to blend in. Lila, on the other hand, looked right at home, confident, professional, like she owned the place. She introduced me to her colleagues, but most of them didn't hide their judgment. They'd give me this polite smile, but you could tell they weren't really interested in getting to know me. A few made subtle comments about my business, and I could see their eyes flickering with skepticism. Some even asked what kind of real work I did. I laughed it off and tried not to let it get to me, but it was obvious that they didn't take me seriously. The evening was long, and I was doing my best to stay engaged, but it was hard. I kept thinking about my business back home, the clients I was meeting the next day, and the work that had to be done. I wasn't used to the whole corporate schmooze and mingle thing. As the night wore on, I noticed Lila getting more and more comfortable with her colleagues. She was laughing, chatting with ease, and it was clear she was enjoying herself. But then, I overheard something that changed everything. I was standing by the bar, nursing a drink, when I heard a group of Lila's coworkers talking about the party. They were discussing how impressed they were with her, how well she was doing, and how much potential she had. But then one of them casually mentioned, "It's crazy that she's engaged to a guy who works with plants. Like, seriously? He's like a gardener. How does that even work?" My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd just been punched in the gut. It wasn't the fact that they didn't understand what I did, it was the way they said it. The condescending tone, the complete lack of respect for the work I had built for myself. And worst of all, I knew that Lila had to have heard it too. She wasn't just working with these people, she was living in this world. And suddenly, it all made sense. I tried to shake it off. I really did. I told myself that Lila didn't mean it. She didn't know what her coworkers were saying. Maybe she didn't even hear it. But deep down, I knew. I could feel it. The distance. The unspoken truth between us was beginning to crack. The next part of the night was a blur. I kept looking at Lila, hoping to see some sign that she was on my side, that she respected the work I'd put into building my business from the ground up. But all I saw was a woman who was enjoying the spotlight, laughing with her colleagues, soaking in the praise they were giving her for her success and drive. And then, out of nowhere, she casually pulled me into a conversation with a group of her coworkers. She introduced me to one of her senior colleagues, a guy named Greg, who looked like he was fresh out of a Wall Street brochure. He was dressed to the nines in a custom-tailored suit, with a smug grin plastered on his face. He extended his hand, but his eyes quickly scanned me up and down, like he was trying to size me up, deciding if I was worth his time. His handshake was firm, but there was an underlying condescension in it that I couldn't ignore. "Lila's told me so much about you," he said, his voice dripping with that fake enthusiasm you can only get from people who look down on you. "So, you're in horticulture?" He didn't even make it sound like a real profession. It was more like he was asking if I was some kind of hobbyist. I felt my face flush, but I forced myself to smile. "Yeah," I said, trying to hold my ground. "I run my own landscaping and plant nursery business. It's going well. I've got a few large clients." "Landscaping, huh?" Greg cut me off. "Must be nice to play with plants all day. Is that what you call work?" He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was a laugh that made me feel small, like I wasn't even worth his time. Before I could respond, Lila jumped in. "Greg, be nice. He's working hard, you know." She didn't sound like she believed it, though. She sounded defensive, like she was trying to justify me to him. I wanted to believe that she was standing up for me, but the way she said it didn't feel right. Greg just chuckled and turned his attention back to Lila. "Well, I'm sure it's great. You must be really proud of him, right?" His tone was dripping with sarcasm. I could feel the weight of his words in the pit of my stomach, but what cut deeper was the look Lila gave me. A look of mild embarrassment. She wasn't defending me, not really. She was apologizing for me. And that, right there, was the breaking point. I felt the anger building up in me, but I tried to keep it together. I knew if I let it out, it would all explode. But then, something shifted. Lila was talking to someone else when I heard a conversation from the other side of the room that made my blood boil. It was a group of Lila's friends, all standing around with their drinks. One of them, a woman I hadn't been introduced to yet, looked over at me and said, "Can you imagine being with someone like that? I mean, does he even have a real career? Lila must be settling." The words hit like a slap to the face. I didn't even know how to react. I just stood there, rooted to the spot, as my heart pounded in my chest. But before I could even process what was happening, I noticed Lila standing right there, listening. She wasn't saying anything, but I could see her expression change. There was a flicker of hesitation, almost like she was reconsidering everything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to lash out and demand an explanation, but I just stood there in silence, my hands clenched into fists. I could feel the heat rising in my body, the anger coursing through my veins, and that's when it all came crashing down. I turned to Lila, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "Is this what you think of me? Is this what you really think?" Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought I might have crossed a line. But the damage was done. The cracks in our relationship were too deep, and I could feel them widening by the second. She didn't answer immediately. She just stood there, her mouth slightly open, looking guilty and unsure of what to say. And that's when I made a decision. A decision that I never thought I would make. As soon as the toast ended, I noticed Lila drifting back to her circle of colleagues, laughing and chatting like nothing had happened. Meanwhile, I was left standing by the buffet table, feeling like a total outsider. My mind was racing. Did she really think so little of me? Did she just reduce my entire career to a joke? I wasn't about to let it slide. I walked over right into the middle of her group. "Lila," I said loud enough for everyone to hear, "can we talk for a second?" Her smile faltered, but she tried to wave it off. "Not now, babe. We're just talking shop." "Yeah, talking about how my career's a joke," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. Her colleagues exchanged awkward glances, but I wasn't going to stop now. "Lila, do you know how insulting it was to hear you laugh about what I do in front of everyone? In front of them?" I gestured to her group, who were now pretending to be fascinated by their drinks. She froze for a moment, clearly not expecting me to call her out in public. Then, instead of apologizing, she scoffed. "You're overreacting. It was just a joke. Everyone here knows that." "A joke?" I said, my voice rising. "You mean like when you said, 'I don't know how he even pays the bills'? That's funny to you?" At this point, the entire room was watching. Conversations around us had died down, and I could feel the stares boring into me from every direction. Lila's face turned red, and I could see her panicking. Can we not do this here? She hissed, grabbing my arm. But I pulled away. Why not here? You had no problem making fun of me in front of everyone. Let's talk about it now. A man from her group, one of her senior colleagues, judging by his suit, chimed in with a chuckle, trying to defuse the situation. Come on, man. It's not that deep. We're just having some fun. Fun? I turned to him, my voice steady but firm. Would it be fun if someone dismissed your work in front of your peers? If someone implied you weren't worth respecting because you didn't have a fancy title or work in a high-rise office? The man immediately looked away, his smirk vanishing. Lila, on the other hand, was fuming. Why are you making this such a big deal? She snapped. Because it is a big deal, I shot back. This isn't just about tonight. This is about how you see me, how you've always seen me. You think I haven't noticed the little digs, the subtle eye rolls when I talk about my work? You're embarrassed by me, Lila. Admit it. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment I thought she might actually deny it. But instead, she said, You're being ridiculous. Why would I be embarrassed by you? I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. Because I'm not good enough for this world you're trying to fit into. And you know what? That's fine. But don't stand here and pretend like you respect me when you clearly don't. By now, people were openly staring, some whispering to each other, others just frozen in awkward silence. I could feel the weight of their judgment, but I didn't care. This wasn't about them. Lila looked around, clearly mortified. Can we please just talk about this later? You're making a scene. A scene? I said, my voice steady but loud enough for everyone to hear. No, Lila. You made this a scene when you decided to mock me in front of your colleagues. You've shown me exactly where I stand in your life, and I'm done pretending that's okay. Her eyes widened as the realization of what I was saying hit her. Wait, you don't mean? I do, I said, cutting her off. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me, someone who doesn't value what I bring to the table, so I'm done. We're done. The room was dead silent. Someone dropped a glass in the background, and the sound shattered the tension for a split second. But then it was back, heavier than before. Lila stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to argue but didn't know what to say. Finally, she blurted out, You're seriously doing this? Here? Now? Yeah, here, now, I said, my voice steady but filled with finality. Because if you don't respect me in public, there's no way you respect me in private. And with that, I turned and walked out. I didn't wait to hear her response or see the aftermath. I just walked out of that room and didn't look back. After a few moments of stunned silence, I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair, my hands trembling. People were still staring, and I could feel 100 judgmental eyes boring into me. Lila, who had been frozen in place, finally broke out of her shock and reached out for my arm. Wait, are you seriously leaving? You're embarrassing me, she hissed, trying to keep her voice low but failing miserably. I yanked my arm free, my voice louder than I intended. Embarrassing you? You just turned our entire relationship into a punchline for your colleagues. At this point, a couple of her coworkers shifted uncomfortably, pretending to look at their phones or their drinks. I could hear someone whisper, Yikes, but I wasn't sticking around to find out who said it. I need some air, I muttered, heading toward the exit. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face when I stepped outside. I leaned against the wall trying to calm down, but it was impossible. My mind was racing, replaying the moment over and over like a bad movie on a loop. A few minutes later, Lila followed me outside. Can we talk? She asked, crossing her arms. I laughed bitterly. Now you want to talk? After humiliating me in front of everyone? It was a joke, she snapped. You're overreacting. They all knew I was kidding. Did they? I shot back. Because it sure didn't sound like a joke. And even if it was, what kind of person does that to someone they're supposed to care about? She rolled her eyes, clearly frustrated. Oh, come on, it's not that serious. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. It was like she wasn't hearing me at all. My frustration boiled over. You know what, Lila? This isn't just about tonight. It's about respect. You've been treating my job, my efforts, my entire life like some kind of joke for months now. I've tried to brush it off, but I can't anymore. Her expression shifted slightly, from defensive to something softer. For a split second, I thought she might actually apologize. But then she said, "Fine, if you're so sensitive about it, maybe we're not as compatible as I thought." And that was it. That was the moment everything between us snapped. I stared at her, feeling a strange mix of sadness and relief. "You're right," I said quietly. "Maybe we're not." Her face fell. "Wait, I'm done," I said, pulling the engagement ring out of my pocket. I held it out to her, but she didn't take it. Her hands were trembling now. "Don't do this," she whispered. "I can't marry someone who doesn't respect me," I said firmly. "You should have thought about that before tonight." Before she could respond, I placed the ring on the small table outside the restaurant and walked away. As I reached my car, I heard her call my name, but I didn't look back. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. The drive home was quiet. I didn't turn on the radio or even check my phone. I just let the silence sink in, and with it, a strange sense of clarity. When I got home, I blocked her on everything. Social media, phone, email. I knew if I didn't, I'd let her guilt trip me into reconsidering. It's been 2 weeks since that night, and while part of me still misses the idea of what we had, I know I made the right decision. Respect is the foundation of any relationship, and without it, there's nothing to build on. So, yeah, that's the story of how my engagement ended in the most public, humiliating way possible. I'll admit it wasn't easy to walk away, but sometimes you have to choose yourself over someone else's comfort.